Hey everybody, I'm Aznfunk. Welcome back to my channel. And in this video, I had the opportunity to talk to Bob Bretall, the Guinness Book of World Records holder for having the largest comic book collection in the world. We talked about so much stuff that the interview ended up lasting for over 3 hours. And as a result, I decided to break this interview up into 3 different videos. Part 1 basically talks about how he got the award and what he had to do to get into the Guinness Book of World Records. Part 2 covers more of his actual collection. He kind of takes us around his comic book room, which is so amazing. He's definitely living the dream. And part 3, while we were chatting, he actually had his monthly pull list delivered, and so our interview ended up being a unboxing video, which was pretty cool. So that's something to look forward to. I'd like to give a huge thanks again to Bob Bretall for taking the time out of his day to chat with me about comics, movies, and everything between. He is one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever spoken to about comics. I highly recommend visiting his website, comicspectrum.com. It's an amazing resource for comic book knowledge, and he has his own blog on there too, so you can kind of get to keep up with him and what's going on in his life. If you are new to my channel, please hit the like and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye. Hey everybody, I'm Aznfunk. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I am joined by Mr. Bob Bretall, the creator of comicspectrum.com and the reigning Guinness Book of World Records holder for the largest comic book collection in the world. Did I get it?
Yep, you did. Now, one thing I'll point out is that doesn't mean I have the most comic books in the world. Whenever I get on something, there's always people in the comments who immediately get on and say, oh, my brother's cousin's neighbor has way more comics than that. And I'm just trying to diffuse that. It's just like.
So what you're saying is, in regards to the record, you're the only person who went through all the hoops to get into the book, even though there may be somebody out there who has a million comic books or something.
Right. You know, I've heard that, some guy in Canada's got 250,000 comic books and some other guy is well, the other thing is I'm not a dealer, right? Mm-hmm. So some people, they own stores and they also collect comics. Well, if I bought collections off of people, I bought like 40,000 comics at a time and cherry picked out, like a bunch of comics, and I'd have a lot more comics too, but I bought all my comics pretty much one by one, plus I've read, other people say, oh, he hasn't read all those. Well, I haven't read every single one, but I've probably read like 95% of the comics I've got. I've got a pretty huge to read pile. It's about 8 short boxes worth of stuff that I haven't read that I want to read. When I get my comics, I read them. Right. And that's not, a lot of people who have a lot of comics can't say that either, because, it takes a lot of time to read 100,000 comic books, but I've been doing it for 50 years, so it's like spread out.
Yeah. It's like. Do you think they should change that record to largest personal comic book collection? That's what
because I created the category with Guinness. The reason is that I was on a forum. This was years ago, probably about 10 years ago. I was on a forum and someone posted that a guy had the world's largest comic book collection, and he had the number was like 65,000 comics. And I'm like, okay, I've gotta have more than 65,000 comics. And I looked into it and I looked at his record, and it wasn't a Guinness record. It was through an Australian thing called like the World Record Agency or something. It was some Australian equivalent to Guinness. It was not, but it wasn't Guinness. So I said, well, I wonder what the Guinness World Record is. So I went to the Guinness site and I searched and there was no record for it. Mm-hmm. So I applied, and there is a lot of work you have to go through to do a Guinness record. I mean, let me tell you, it took me like 3 years, from when I first sent in the application to when I got the official record. So is that how that works? You have to apply. It's not that they find you or someone. No, they don't find you at all. Well, maybe some things, but generally you have to apply, and you have to prove that you have the comics. And then they sent me, when I did it, they sent me a definition of a comic book too. Like, the other thing is these are not duplicates. Some people have got like a long box full of X-Men #1 by Jim Lee. Not the 60s one, or, you know,
Right,
whatever.
right.
They buy all these, you know, like every week I'm at the comic shop and there's some dude buying, you know, 4 or 5 copies of every Marvel comic book or DC comic book that comes
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
Well, that counts as one. You
Oh,
know,
interesting.
it's
Okay,
like
okay.
you don't count duplicates. If I have 5 copies, if I don't really buy duplicates, I would, you know, oh yeah, I'm gonna get rich off these comics. A lot of people think that. And it's like I kind of went through that phase.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, yeah, you know, a lot more trouble than it's worth. If I put the amount of effort into like picking the comic that's going to go up in value, if I put that same amount of effort into the stock market or buying real estate, I'd guaranteed make more money doing the stock market or real estate. So I never really looked at comics as a money making proposition. I looked
Yeah.
at it as I like the stories. I like, you know, I follow various artists and various writers. I like the characters. And even if the comic doesn't end up being worth, you know, a bunch of money, I still got the entertainment out of reading that comic.
Right. Well, that's kind of like the nice or the beauty of comics is that some people can buy it for different reasons, right? So people like you buy
Oh
it to
yeah,
read them, to enjoy the stories. Some people buy it for speculation, to resell as an investment, as a business. So, yeah, no, it's kind
yeah,
of refreshing to, you know, actually find people who read the comics they buy, because most of the time, and I know a lot of these people, and I am this person at some point, they buy comics already slabbed, so you
yes.
can't read them, and it's mainly just a framed piece of art in a way.
Right. It's kind of like I always. It's kind of like stamp collecting. You know,
Correct.
it's just,
Yeah.
and you know, there's nothing wrong with that. Like what I say is like, there's no wrong way to collect. It's like to me, collecting anything, whether you're collecting comics or stamps or coins or teacups, you know, it's just like if it makes you happy and you're getting, you know, joy out of putting them there on the, you know, you have a holder there, you've got your CGC comic I see behind you, it looks cool.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yep. Right here. Yep.
and, you know, it's like I have a spinner rack over here. Uh,
Oh, very nice.
you know, I got it when I first went into business.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are, hey, spinner racks are coming back right now, and they are
Yeah, I
pricey.
don't have one of the really old school white wire ones. I wish I did, but this one's nice because it's got a lot of pockets on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, it's like I like Phil No, like I like Alex Ross. I like
So
Alex
do
Ross.
I.
I like Phil Noto. I really
I love
love
Phil
Phil
Noto. Yep.
Noto's art. You know, so if there's a variant cover like Phil Noto a while ago did those Marvel's 80th anniversary of
Yeah.
variant covers. And I bought all those and I put them on the spinner rack. And they were up on the spinner rack for like 6 or 8 months. And then I kind of rotated them out for
Mhm.
something else. So it's like I'll buy them and I'll put them up and then I look at, you know, every day I see them there on the rack. I kind of like turn the rack every now and again so I see a different face of it. I don't think that there's a wrong way to collect. You know, it's just like if it's making you happy and it, you know, you're having a good time, then that's what it's about, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I started off collecting comics because I enjoyed the characters and the story and, you know, Stanley and everything. And then I slowly moved into, you know, oh, I really like this particular artist and the way they render this character.
right.
Then I moved into, I really like this cover for a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then I moved into, oh, this book has the first appearance of this character. So,
Right.
yeah, in terms of my habits, I've gone through different phases, but there are some people who only do one thing, and that's okay, you know.
I think if you collect for long enough, most
Yeah,
people who kind of like stick with it will go through phases of
absolutely.
collecting, you know, and you,
Yeah.
you kind of go from one thing to the next and you might specialize, you know, it's like I'm kind of like a completist to some extent.
Mm,
You know, it's like
that
I
I am
like
not.
my want list is basically if I don't have it, it's on my want list, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I like all different kind of comics. I mean, I'll buy weird indie books like from the old days that it's just like if I'm shopping and I see a comic that I've just never seen before,
Yeah.
it's like I want to buy that. Not if it was like $50 or
Sure.
something.
Sure.
Usually, like here's here's one that I just got called Bedtime Story. You
Dead.
know,
Never heard of it.
I never saw this comic in my life. It's from the New Comics Group. and it's from the 80s or something.
Hmm.
And it's just like, it was like $1, you know, it's at
Yeah,
some
yeah.
sale, and it was $1. And it's like, I have never seen this comic before in my life. And it's like, it was $1. So it's like, I'll buy it. And some of them, I just, you know, I'll read them and I'll like, wow, that was really good. Or, you know, like, what happened to that artist? And, you know, things like that. And other times you read it and it's like, whoa, that was bad.
Yeah, yeah. There's a reason why this was 50 cents.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things is when you do find a comic or a creator, an artist that you've never heard of, and then you realize that they've been around for a while and they have a backlog, and then you're just like, oh, there's a whole new, you know, avenue or collection of books that I've never even seen or heard, and now you're like, you know, you get that rush again, like, oh, you know, collecting's fun again.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I like the one shop near me had a bunch of old heavy metals. They've heard of heavy metal mag. They still put it out.
Yeah.
But like old ones from the 70s and 80s. And like they were like $1 or $2 a piece. So I just bought all of them because I never really bought heavy metal back then. And I'm reading through them and it's like one of them had like old Howard Chaykin stuff that I had never seen before. Actually, if you ever heard of the character Saber by Don McGregor and Paul Galassi, it was actually, they had the whole first 20 pages in this issue of Heavy Metal that when I looked it up came out like 2 months before.
Like there was like a preview or something.
So it's technically like the first appearance of this character, who had like a 20 or 30 issue series back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Eclipse. You know, so it's like you find cool stuff like that, and it kind of gives you that rush. You know, it's like, oh, I never knew that this existed. And, you know, it's cool.
Yeah. Well, it's like that reminds me of like Heroes magazine. They I didn't realize that magazine had a lot of first appearances, like of the Ninja Turtles, of they had like a bunch of other characters. I think it was either Venom or the Black Costume. I can't remember, one of the two. But yeah, like publications like that you normally don't hear about had like all these previews of characters that weren't going to show up for a while, and those are now collectibles.
It's kind of interesting because like over the years, I think a lot of this is driven by dealers. I think is like what they want to call a first appearance.
Sure.
You know, it's like for the longest time, you know, because Wolverine, right?
Oh yeah.
Hulk 181, right? Well, not really, because he appears in the last page of Hulk 180.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be honest. A cameo is an appearance. It you know.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's like for the longest time, that wasn't
181
as the first appearance.
Yep.
Right, and it was always 181. But then at some point, some dealers, I think, figured out, oh, well, 180 is not going for that much. Let's buy those up and let's start calling that the first appearance. And then, you know, it's like, well, there was a house ad in Marvel Age magazine that had the character or something before, you know, that. Let's call that the first appearance now. And it's just like whatever the collecting consensus is and whatever, I think usually it's like whatever the people who are selling this stuff figures they can do and make the most money off of collectors.
Yeah, I agree with you. They'll make up crazy things like the only time Frank Miller drew Batman and Elektra together in one, you know, like they make things like that where it's like the only time or the first time this one instance ever happened, not necessarily like the first appearance of a character. But yeah, and it's like I can see I've fallen into that a few times where it's like, oh my gosh, it's the only time that Spawn and Spider-Man have appeared on the cover together, something crazy like that. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it also, so many people use these apps and websites now that kind of tell them what, you know, like there's Key Collector, and I don't use these.
I don't use them either. Yeah.
About them, and I know that they'll come out and they'll say, oh, you know, such and such. Ooh, it's going to be collectible, or it is collectible. I know, like I'll go to the comic shop on Wednesday, and it's like if some comic is like sold out before it ever even hits the stands, it's because one or more of these apps has like said that it's going to be collectible, and the guy at my local shop is like answering the phone all day long from people and
calling.
Oh, Punchline, you know, like that was the latest one in Batman. It's like the first appearance of Punchline and something, and it's like, and he was getting calls all day from people who never came to his shop that just wanted to buy up all the copies because
I mean, good for the shop, but
that, you know, and he wasn't selling them to those. I mean, he'd limit them to one copy per person, and he like held some back for his regulars that, you know, bought the thing, and he sold it for cover price to them. You know, kind of good shop like that, right?
Yeah.
Those are the kind of shops you want to. My advice to people is find a shop like that if you can, because if there's a shop that, like, the day a book comes out, they're selling it for $10 or $15.
Yeah.
I don't want to shop at that shop, you know? It's just like, you know.
Well, it's, I know like last month when they announced that the Spider-Man Miles Morales game was coming out for the PS5, I saw the prices for basically any Miles Morales comic book shoot up to like, you know, 10 times what they're worth. And it's really crazy that, you know, the speculation and just that kind of, you know, once something is going to go into another medium or become a movie or something, that, you know, the appearance of that character in a comic book just becomes, you know, unaffordable. So yeah, I try not to be.
You pay really close attention, you can make some money day trading that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Like stocks, but you have to be really on top of it, because I guarantee you that the dealers are all over those apps too.
Absolutely.
So the chances of like just some regular person, if you don't know, you know, if you don't have some inside track, it's really difficult, right? Because the dealers are going to be jacking up the prices beforehand, and it's like if they kill some superhero, you know, how long
exactly. It's just a matter of time. Yep. Like, and now it's not even long, you know. It's
and they like make it like a big deal, and it's like, why?
Sure.
But anyway, you know, it's like the deaths of Superman, you know, that was the same thing. It's like it went really high, and it's not like it's a dollar bin book, but you can buy that black bag Superman probably for less than $20 now, where at the time it was selling for 80, 100, you know, more. That, like, you know, like the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? I mean, that's a hugely popular franchise, you know, generation, at least one generation of people have grown up watching cartoons and playing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys and really like the Turtles, right? But that very first comic, they printed a couple thousand of it, right? I mean, it was like a really low-end black and white indie book. And, you know, same thing with The Walking Dead before that TV show, you know, that one, you know, like there were like, I don't know, like maybe 5,000 copies of that printed, you know, maybe 6. I mean, it's like most image books didn't have a really high print run. I have never been hung up on getting like super high grade. If I can get a nice looking 4.0 to 5.5,
right,
I'm happy. And
also vice versa, right? There will be books that get super low grades, but you're like, it looks great to me.
Right, exactly.
And I'm like,
those are the ones that I buy. I call it eye appeal. There are things that have defects, you know, they'll have maybe a rusted staple, or they'll have a crease, or maybe the
chunk missing,
are not really white, but you know, they've got, you know, like little edge creases or spines.
Those things don't bother me at all.
You know, a bumped corner or something like that, and they're low graded, but in general, they look fairly nice. You know, and those are the ones that I tend to, you know, I gravitate to. It's like, I mean, that's got really nice eye appeal to me. I like that one. And I've even gotten books that are graded, you know, 2.5 look, that have a decent eye appeal to them. I've looked at other things that are slabbed, and like they're slabbed at a 4.5, and it's like, no way.
Right. Well, sometimes you can't even tell. I've seen this too. One seller will sell one book, the same book, and one slabbed at like a 5, and the other slabbed at like a 2, and they look almost exactly the same. Like, no, there's no major defects. They're both blue labels, and you're just like, why would I want to pay twice as much for the 5 when I can get the 2? You know, and I'm not buying it. I'm not buying for resale, or you know, I'm buying to own the book.
Because they're human people. They're grading these books, and they have off days like anything else.
Yep.
To CGC or not CGC. And it's like, he would send some books in and it would get like wildly different grades.
Yeah.
I know people that get books back from CGC, and if they don't have the grade that they want, they'll crack them and resubmit them, and they might get a grade that's like a full point higher.
Yeah.
On a different submission, they get a different grader on a different day, and it makes a big difference that point, whether you get a 7.5 or an 8.5 or an 8.5 or a 9.2 or
sure,
something.
Some people will be outraged by a 0.5 low grade, lower grade than they were expecting. And and I've submitted books too where I'm like, this is going to be like a really low graded book, and it'll come back and it'll be like a 9, and I'm like, I don't even know how that happened.
Right. They work both ways. But that's like, it's so funny because I was there at the beginning of CGC, right? When they were just running ads in the Comics Buyer's Guide. Doesn't exist anymore, but it was like a big.
It's like, what's that?
It was a big thing back in the day.
Yeah.
It was like kind of before the internet,
Right. Yeah. You had to look things up in a little book.
But it was like a newspaper. It turned into a magazine in later years, but it was like it came every week in the mail, and it was like a newspaper with all the industry news. I always liked it as a trusted source, but back when CGC first started out, but they were really putting a lot of ads out. And I have to give those guys credit because they have an entire generation of collectors. Really, I'll say they're brainwashed into thinking that if their comic is not slabbed with their official grade on it, that it is just not any good. It's just like, and I have just documented things, where it's just like they have professional graders, but I mean, they're still people. I mean, they're not any better necessarily at grading than like somebody who's been looking at comics for 50 years, and it's like, well, I know the difference between these two things. Now, I will admit, I cannot tell the difference between a 9.6 and a 9.8.
Right.
Get like way up at the top, like the little microscopic things that are going to like make a difference, looking through a magnifying glass at things.
Well, for a while, I know that, I used to only I would only get my books graded by CGC, only CGC. Any other third-party grading brand, I would be like, nope, I don't want it. But then after a while, I was like, I feel like I can get the same book and the same grade, but at a lower price if it's like a CBCS.
CBCS is legit.
Oh, yeah.
PGX, they're a little squirrely, right?
Sure, yeah.
I think that the existence of CBCS has made CGC do some things differently. I think now, does CGC actually authenticate autographs now?
CGC, yeah. No, well, I mean, they need a witness.
If you didn't have a witness, they would just say writing on the cover. It would just, whereas CBCS, they know what Stan Lee's autograph looks like. They know what, and they'll authenticate an autograph. Right. And you don't have to have it witnessed. If you got the thing, like I've got comics that I've had signed by Stan or George Perez or, whoever.
Yeah.
That I signed by them, and I know it's legit.
Right.
But if I wanted to get it slabbed, CBCS, they would actually they have a service where they have somebody who can authenticate that autograph and say, yeah, that's a legit autograph.
Right.
So that you don't just get this, we don't even know what that is. It's just some kind of writing on the cover.
Yeah, name written on a cover. Yeah, that's what CGC does if there wasn't a witness. Yeah.
Well, and to me, that's a way for them to make more money too, right? Because they charge X amount of money to get their witness service. They are brilliant, those guys. I mean, I give them full marks on their marketing and their campaigning. They have got just so entrenched that people just, tens of thousands of collectors just throw money at them every day. I mean, they make a lot of money. It's kind of like they're like a stockbroker, right? If you make money or lose money, they make money on every slab comic, right? They're going to make X amount of dollars. And if it's like a really expensive comic, they charge a percentage of that comic, right? It's not just like, you know, a straight fee. So
well, yeah, and you know, they're starting to get into grading cards now. You know, they're trying to diversify, and they did posters for a while, and it was like, okay, that's a weird thing to choose. But now, and they're doing this thing now where they're bringing creators in-house and having signings with them now. They're not even going to conventions and then hosting them. They're bringing people to them, so you don't have to.
I think they started started that, but then with COVID, really, since there are no conventions, you know. I think they actually did that. It's actually kind of nice. I mean, if somebody wanted to get something signed by one of these creators, it's like you don't even have the option to meet these guys now at a convention, because basically every convention's been canceled since March, and I don't even know when they're going to have a convention again. You know, with COVID running around.
Well, this year's a wash. So I mean,
this year's a loss, and you know, depending on if they actually come up with a vaccine or not.
Well,
you know, maybe next year is going to be problematic too.
There was a cure and everything. I mean, it's going to take some time before people are going to start being comfortable to even have like a massive convention, right?
Yes.
That's going to take, who knows how long.
First one I went to was 1990. So I went to my 30th in a row.
First convention or first San Diego?
First San Diego con. So I went for 30 years.
You went every, okay.
I went every year. Wow. From 1990 to 2019. Streak broken 2020.
What was it like in 1990?
It was nothing. I mean, well, 1990 was,
it was
like
all comic vendors, right?
Well, it wasn't at the convention center that it's at now. It was at this downtown. I didn't go when it was at the hotel. They had it at a couple of different hotels, but then there was this little convention center in downtown.
Yeah. Well, there was a while. I think my first one was like in 2013 or something, and I was able to go. I was able to get a ticket first off, like by luck, and then I went 3 years in a row. But then, you know, they had this thing where if you went the year before, you get priority to try and get it the next year, which is so mean, because it makes you want to do it, because if you don't, then you forfeit the opportunity to exactly. So I was like, we gotta go, because then we won't be able to go again next year. So anyway, we did that 3 years in a row, and then after that, I have just not been able to. I mean, I haven't really tried, because I already knew I couldn't get it. But I was like, there's just no way.
What my friends do, we have like a group of people that get on. Essentially like a Zoom.
You need like a whole village to just get these tickets.
You get like 4 or 5 people with the IDs, and you all get on at the same time, and everybody has everybody else's ID. So if one person gets in, you can buy like 4 tickets or something. You buy tickets for everybody.
Yeah, right.
So you only need one of the 4 people to get in, to get all 4 people in.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the way that we did it for a little bit. I mean, back before, like, I forget what year they started doing it, but certainly into the 2000s, just the year before, you could just walk up to a booth in the lobby and buy your ticket for next year.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember the first year that they weren't selling tickets in the lobby, I'm like, what's up with this?
Yeah.
Like, well, you have to go online and buy it. So many people, I always hear, there's no comics at Comic-Con. I mean, those people don't know what they're talking about. There's more comics at Comic-Con than the next 4 conventions combined. You just have to look for it. You know, if you go to the floor, every publisher pretty much is there. There are huge areas with artists that you can talk to, you know, and, you know, like Boom, and, you know, it's like, it's maybe not the best experience if all you want is Marvel comics, you know, because they're usually, you can go to the Marvel booth and like barely even know that they publish comic books, because it's all about the movies and, you know, TV shows and video games, because that makes them way more money. I mean, if you want to get into Hall H, or if you want to get an autograph from some celebrity, it's brutal. You know, if you want to buy the exclusive toy from Hasbro, it's brutal. It's like everybody wants that, huge lines. And I think it's a great opportunity because even people who go to con, a lot of times they don't go to that many panels because they're spending a lot of time on the floor, buying stuff.
Well, you have to choose,
fun,
right? Yeah.
Right. Or they want to go to Hall H, and that takes like all day. Right?
Yeah.
This is like,
or all night.
If you get in there, you're not going to leave because you're never going to get back in.
Yeah.
So, I think the virtual con is actually kind of interesting because it'll give people a chance to sample lots of different panels that they might not have ever.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or,
Yeah. Have you done one of these online Comic Cons?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Definitely my first one.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay. In 2015, you were recorded having 101,822 comic books.
Yes.
How many comic books do you have in your collection now?
I'm in the process. I'll give you some commentary as I'm going about.
Oh, of course.
I had been using Comic Base as my database.
Like an inventory tracking?
Keeping track of my collection.
Okay.
And I'm currently in the process of moving from Comic Base to Comic Connect, which is by collectors.com. They do the CLZ app.
Oh, right.
63,578 in the database right now in collectors.
Uh-huh.
And in my comma separated value file, I have 49,776 rows still to put into it. So 63 and a half plus 40 of us, that's 113-ish. Right? Plus I've got about, like I said, 12 short boxes of stuff in my to read pile, which are not in there.
Wow.
So how many comics 12 short boxes hold. And then I've got about 5 long boxes that I have read and I have not put in the database yet. That's another 1,000, right? Because there's no more. Because what? Like a long box holds about 250 to 300 comics.
Well, which long box are you talking about, right? Because there's the short box, there's a long box, and then there's like the extra long box. Have you seen those? That holds like 300. Okay, yeah, that's a long box. Yep.
That's a long box. That's box 401.
And how many of those do you have? Or how many?
That's 401 right there.
Wow.
And then I have 4 in my closet that don't have numbers on them, so I have 405.
Wow. So like,
how does a bunch of short boxes? I have drawer boxes that have stuff in them. Also, those are pretty much all in one of these 2 places. So I've got my database and I've got my comma separated value file that I'm importing a piece at a time. So anyway, I'll end up with probably somewhere around 115, 116,000.
Wow. So my next question is, how does that work? So like every year, do you just update Guinness with your new
haven't
total?
Updated them in a while. So when I finish getting all my books into collectors, then I will do my update with them. And what I might do at that point is I got to talk to the guys at collectors. They're actually pretty nice guys. I've been working with them like I'm on a first name basis with one of their tech support guys, because as I've been putting my collection in, I'm finding all kinds of stuff that it's not bugs, but it's just books that they don't have.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And it's just like, because I collect all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you guys don't have such and so. Why don't you create a series for that for me? And they will.
They're probably like, Bob, but not another one.
Yeah. And, so I'm actually I've added hundreds of comics to their database.
Wow.
So far. And I'm about halfway done. So a little more than half.
So
I'm making it more robust, but I'm going to talk to them and see what they don't have right now, which I'd like to talk to them about adding, is adding the capability to make a read-only login that you could give somebody so that somebody else can browse through your collection.
Right. And not be able to edit it. Yeah.
Without editing it.
Right.
You know, just like make it a pure read-only, give them read access only, because then I could give the Guinness guy, say, here you go.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Take a look. And they could see all my comics, and which will be a good check when I get everything in, because I have so many comics that I don't alphabet, you know, it's like,
I was gonna say, how are you keeping track? Like, you have a nice system.
Alphabetize 100, and you know, it's like I would
that's
continually stack sorting my entire collection. So all I do is when I get a box, when I read the stuff, I throw it in a long box, right? And when the box is full, then I will alphabetize that long box. So it's just, you know, and then I'll enter it in the database, right?
Got it.
So that if I know that a book, because I look in the database and it's got what box number a book's in. So if I look up, you know, Amazing Spider-Man 300, and it says, okay, that's in box 220.
Mm-hmm.
I should be able to go to box 220 and, you know, flip through it. And that was actually part of how we validated the collection for Guinness in the first place, because nobody like sat and actually counted.
I was gonna say, like, did they send
116,000 comics? What we did was a guy who did it with me actually used to be an accountant who would audit places. So he, you know, and you can do a sample type audit. So he picked out like 5 boxes at random.
Okay.
And he counted all the books in those.
Okay.
And then he looked at what my database said the total number of books in those boxes were, and they matched. So it's like, okay, you know, that's good. I picked 5 random boxes.
Oh, I see. He was just testing to see if your system was accurate. Okay.
Now, then the other thing he did was he went through and he just picked like 20 random comics. So he'd say, okay, show me Thor 221. And I'd look in the database and say, oh, Thor 221, that's in box 78. So I go down to the garage, pull out box 78, flip, Thor 221. Here you go. The amount of effort it would take to fake something like that, you know, to be accurate to that level is like, it's just not going to happen, right? So he picked like these 20 books. He picked 20 random books. I was able to show them, here they are, you know, where the database says they are. And in general, the database says it's got, you know, 300 comics, 296 comics in this box. And when you physically counted that box, it had 296 comics in it. You know, so that lets him know that the total is likely to be accurate as well. So then you can just look at the total that the database is telling you are there and believe it. So that gives you, you know, but if it's not cataloged in any way, it would be like really difficult to validate that you have what you say you have, because someone could just say they've got anything. You know?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Like, if you didn't have your system for this auditor type person to validate, would they have had to have had someone manually count all your books?
Well, they wouldn't have done that, right? It's like, they're not going to do that. You know, they're not going to have some guy sit around for 3 weeks counting 100,000 comic books. It would be just like, sorry, you lose. You know, it's like, we're not going to validate your record. So, you know, it's like the onus is on you to make things easy for them.
Got it. Right? So what you're really saying is you have the largest organized catalog collection of comics in the world.
Right. That, you know, that, you know, people have bothered to do anything with. And it's, again, you know, I also, and it's hard to prove this to Guinness, but, you know, it's just like, I also like to stand on the fact that I've read my comics. I buy comics and I read them, whereas a lot of people, especially people who just buy collections and stuff and have lots of comics, they just have lots of comics.
Yeah.
It's just like they haven't read them necessarily.
You are also the first recipient of this record, right? Because prior to
first
you,
and only, I guess. So far.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Till somebody unseats me.
So I saw a video that they sent someone to your house and they did a room tour. Was that Guinness?
The one with the girl in the Wonder Woman outfit?
Yes.
That was Guinness, yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
It was fun. I mean, like, I've had different people come for different things. I had like DC Comics came one time.
Really?
With the people who ran the DC. I guess they just stopped having that DC weekly web show. But way back in the early days, they sent a team out, and those guys did. But then I had to like switch out, and I had to like put all like DC
all your DC stuff. Yeah. You're like, I only collect DC.
I don't want to see Spider-Man stuff sitting around when they're doing a DC show. That was kind of a pain in the ass.
So did you have to do some kind of setup for when Guinness?
I definitely did. I had to, for when DC came out, I definitely had to like take down Marvel stuff and like put more DC stuff in areas of prominence.
That's hilarious. So did you have to hide your Amazing Fantasy 15?
I don't probably. I don't know if I had it when they came out yet. I only got that I must have had it. I got it like 5 or 6 years ago, so I must have had it.
Oh, okay. So it's not too long.
I wrote a blog about getting that too, where it's like probably informative for people on like just the research I did on buying. If you want to buy a genuinely expensive, and that one I bought CGC, right?
Yeah. It's signed by Stan too, right?
If you're going to spend a decent amount of money on a comic book, that is a thing that CGC offers, right? It's like you don't have to worry, like something that's worth, let's say, over $5,000.
Sure.
People are somewhat incentivized to maybe, flex the grade a little bit because it makes a lot of difference, or have restoration that's not identified, or, whatever, right? So having CGC validate what is and what is not, authentic about that is very useful.
Sure. Well, it's like also a peace of mind, right? Because anyone can show a photo of AF-15, but you don't know if it's real.
Right.
I mean, also, granted, you could also fake a CGC slab, but at the same time, it's a little more reassuring, especially if you're buying online from somebody you don't know.
Yeah, and I bought this online. I mean, that's the thing. It's like buying online, you definitely want, the CGC thing, like when it's a really expensive book, because if something's like, I'd say $100 or something, I'll roll the dice,
Sure.
Look at the pictures and not worry too much about it. But when you're buying something that's really quite expensive, it's CGC peace of mind is worth it. So
totally.
I am all for CGC in those instances.
Right. And I remember you saying you don't have a ton of slab comics.
No, I have like a little thing, like all my slabs are pretty much, can you see
that? Okay. So you have like two piles. Little lower. There we go. Okay. All right. Yep. First Hawkeye, first Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, let me pull those off the top, because basically that's a little piece of furniture that is made to hold CGC slab. See that?
I see that. And that's it? That's your whole CGC slab collection?
Yeah, that's all my slab books. And they actually, if you look down, can you see that? It's got glass around the sides. You can like stick.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Comics around the side.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're visible. I mean, I could have that sitting out in the middle of the room. I don't. But I've had more. I cracked a few things that were in slabs.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I got my Showcase 22, I cracked it.
To read. Yeah.
I mean, it was like a 4.0 or something, or 4.5. So it's not like I'm not going to crack it. Like, I actually have a 10.0.
Oh, yeah, I saw the 9.9 and I was like, wait, is that
I have a 9.9 and I have a 10.0.
What's the 10.0?
It is, it'll take me longer. I can show it to you. It's in the,
yeah, sure.
Can you see it?
Fringe?
Fringe. But it's kind of an homage to the Green Lantern number 76. See where it says Red Lantern, Red Arrow?
Yeah.
So it's just a wacky comic. Can you see the 10.0 label?
I can see yep, I see it kind of. Yeah, I saw the 10.
So anyway, it's just like a variant cover, it's a variant cover that was kind of cool. It was something that I didn't have. I just thought, it'd be cool to have a 10.0.
Yeah. Well, I also have a 10, and I only bought it because I thought it'd be nice to just have one. I didn't even really care about the cover. I mean, I was like, okay, it's got to be at least a Marvel cover. But yeah, I was just like, I don't care what it is. Just need to have a 10 and a 9.9.
Yeah, I was the same way, except I didn't go for for that one, I liked that cover because it was kind of an homage to that Green Lantern 76. And my 9.9 is an Alex Ross Rocketeer sketch variant. And I like
that looked awesome.
Yeah. And I like, but same thing. I got 199, 10.0. And then a lot of the other ones are just like, well, they just so happened that the one that I found that was a price that I was willing to pay was in a slab. So I just didn't, I was cracking them for a while just out of defiance, back in the early days of CGC. Sure. And then I just like, they're slab. I've got like a Marvel Masterwork. So I've read, this Tales of Suspense with the first Hawkeye. So I might as well just keep it in the slab, it makes it a little easier to resell,
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's really weird.
But for my heirs.
Sure. Oh, so I'm assuming do you have any intention of selling your collection?
And it was the same thing. Stan's handlers were there. And they're like, don't look Stan directly in the eye and don't do this and do that. But Stan handler gave us the dirtiest look.
Really? Thanks again for watching. If you'd like to watch more interviews, click here. For everything else, click here. I'll wait. Just click one of these buttons and end my suffering.